Hi, I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Ainsley Billings. Ainsley is a first-time author hoping to always create new worlds and characters. She is currently studying psychology with the goal of becoming a forensic psychologist. She has always loved reading and writing, and this book is a dream come true for her. When she is not studying or writing, Ainsley enjoys playing with her two golden doodles and watching way too much TV with her family. Welcome to the show, Ainsley.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I am so glad to have you, listeners. I actually know Ainsley's mom, and so I have heard a ton about Ainsley, so I'm so excited to meet her. I mean, I know it's not in real life per se, but to have a chance to talk to her.
I'm very excited. Yes, my mom has been pushing me to do this. She's like, you got to meet Kara. She's so wonderful. You got to talk to her. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, when I saw your book coming out, I'm like, I don't think I've had someone. I mean, I know I'm like, you're kind of like once removed from, your
Right,
mom.
right.
And I'm like, and I
Yeah.
haven't met her mom in real life either, but I'm like, I don't think I've had anybody so close to me get a book published. So
That's
yes,
so
bring her on the
cool.
show.
Yes,
So
yeah, I saw that and I was like, I got to get on this podcast. She's doing amazing things.
yes, awesome. Well, we have your lovely bio here, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah, so I'm a relatively young writer. I'm 21
Okay.
and I'm finishing my undergrad this semester, actually. So I graduate in December. So it's a little bit of a younger author. I have just always loved writing. I
Yeah.
had a teacher back in seventh grade that she loved writing and it instilled such a passion for it within me. And I think it all took off from there.
Yeah. Well, did she
Just,
inspire you as well?
yes. Yeah. The
Yeah.
book dedication. So the book dedication is to Mrs. Bober. That was my teacher that
Yeah.
really just helped me realize that that was a way to just let my feelings be talked about in a safe environment, let myself just kind of go into the writing. So
Yeah.
that's kind of who I am as a writer. Yeah.
I love that. I just was speaking with someone last week and we were talking about how if you could just impact one person in like a situation exactly like your teacher,
Hmm.
right? If you can inspire one person in this world, like that is, right? Like that's something to hang your
Yeah,
hat up on.
that's wonderful. It's a wonderful experience. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So once that kind of opened the door in seventh grade, have you kind of continuously been writing since then?
Yes. So this book, The Offenders, I started freshman year of high school.
Wow.
Was my original draft, and boy, oh boy, was it a rough draft.
Okay.
Yeah. And so over years and years and years, I've edited, I've added as I've experienced life and feelings and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And to the book that's been published now. And that's just to me, I don't think of books as such a process. I read them in a couple of days. It's
Sure.
just you sit down and you read a book. And so writing it really just taught me some lessons of patience, of just perseverance, just really instilling that continual passion in me.
Yeah, I love that. And I will say, listeners, I read The Offenders earlier this month. Well, actually, in October. So I guess we're in November now. And it does not read like a freshman in high school at all. I would never guess that you wrote
Thank you.
that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wrote it. I've written multiple drafts. The most recent one I think was maybe sophomore year of college.
Okay.
So 2, 3 years ago. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just one of those things I just kept coming back to.
Yeah.
Couldn't get away. Yeah.
I'm so impressed that you've been able to do this while doing school as well. Is writing kind of an escape for you?
Yes. I would say writing and reading are probably the two biggest escapes for me.
Yeah.
I write to process.
Okay.
That's kind of how I deal with just big life experiences, big feelings. And I write to let those things be understood in my own mind.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my process when I write there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that because I'm thinking again, going through college, right? Even high school, that's a lot of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And I always did where if I knew I had some big project coming up, I'm like, okay, you cannot read any leisure books because I knew that I would be drawn towards my leisure book I was reading
Yes.
versus the textbook. And I'm like, nope, no picking that up until
Yep.
maybe finals were over. And
Hmm.
then I would
Hmm.
have a couple weeks reprieve to read as many books as I could before I started back up
Yes.
again.
Yes. That's what I'll do. I'll have like, I have a couple of books set aside already for finals week. I'm like, okay, you've been waiting all semester. Those are your reward.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely a time management lesson to figure out when you have to do school, when you can read, when you can write. Yeah, it's definitely one of those big life lesson of time management.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm working right now with I have an 8-year-old.
Okay.
And we're working right now of like he tries to hurry to get his work done so then he can go do other things. But then it's, how when you rush through something, it's not
Right.
always done correctly. And so we're like, well, you
Mhm.
need to take your time with this. And even just prioritizing the, tasks he needs to do. It's like once you finish these things you have to do, then you can go do whatever you want
Yes.
until
Yes.
dinner time or bedtime or whatever, but so we're even working right now on just how to prioritize your tasks by what you need to get done.
That's such an important skill. So kudos for you. And that's awesome.
I mean, well, we're working on it. It is
We're
still a
working on
work
it.
in
Hey,
progress
you
over
know
here.
what? It's there. It's just starting.
Yes.
That's the first step.
Yeah, and I feel like this third step to third grade, right? It's a lot more expectation on the
Yes.
student.
Oh,
So it's been the
yes.
perfect avenue to kind of do it, but it's also like you don't want to let them fail as the parent. So you're like, "Okay, let's do this. Let's do that."
Right.
You know? But I want you to start figuring out what you need to do to be
Right.
successful. So now, are you still writing?
I am writing. So I
Okay.
have just a personal goal to write a book in every genre. And
Fun.
I haven't decided like which genres slash subgenres that's going to end up looking like. I have a book that's done and currently I'm editing it very
Okay.
slowly.
Yep.
It's a historical fiction book.
Mm. That
And
is
then,
my favorite genre.
yes, oh my goodness, it was so fun to write. It was such a good one to write. And then this summer, I wrote an adult fiction book.
Okay.
And that was an interesting experience because I kind of went from such a long time of working on this offenders book, which is very young adult based,
Yeah.
and then just looking at adult fiction and just adult experiences, things like that. That was a very interesting time to write, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I realized what we haven't done is can you tell us a little bit about The Offenders for the listeners that maybe
Yes,
haven't read it yet?
yes. Yeah, so The Offenders is a YA dystopian kind of sci-fi um, book, and it follows Astra Larkin, who is living on this kind of dystopian planet, Galak, and she basically broke one of the rules of the government. And if they find out, she'll get banished. And she doesn't want to do that.
Yep.
She doesn't really want to do that. So she teams up with one of her rivals to try to help delete this information that she broke the rules to save her and her not, Zach. And it ends up she finds he gets banished. She finds out there's actually a healthy, thriving planet. Um, and that there's a lot of secrets that her parents and the government have kept from her and the society. And she has to
Yeah.
kind of uncover all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ainsley does an excellent job with the world building. Like I have these visuals in my mind of the worlds that you've created just
Thank
from how
you.
descriptive your text was. So it's
Thank
a
you. I
really fun book for that.
thank you. Yeah, it's actually the original, like very, very original rough draft freshman year. Those worlds, I had a dream. Funny enough, I had a dream,
Interesting.
and it was like these two competing worlds, and a character that was like going between the worlds, and that was the grounding point for
Wow.
this story. Yeah.
Like, thank you, God, or
I
whoever
was like,
sent me this
okay,
dream.
cool, I'll take it. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, how amazing. I don't think I've ever had anybody come on and be like, I dreamt about the world that I wrote about.
Yeah, most of my stories are actually just I'll have a very vivid dream and then I'll kind of take a piece of it and I'll use it to write a story.
Yeah.
That's how I come up with my story ideas.
I'm so impressed because I do not remember my dreams. Like, I maybe remember one dream every like 2 years, and then it's so
Yeah,
bizarre, and
yeah.
as most dreams are, I think. But I always think that, like, I wish I remembered more of what I was dreaming. Because
I
sometimes I'll
know.
wake up and I'm like laughing. And I was like, well, what was going on? Like,
Like, what's happening? Why was that funny? I'm gonna write that down.
yeah, my college roommate, we studied abroad together in Rome.
Okay.
And we shared this bedroom in Rome when we went. And she was telling me, she's like, do you know you laugh in your sleep? And I was like, no, but I had never shared a room with anybody.
Wow.
And it's like I literally had no idea. And then one morning, I remember I woke up to like my shoulder shaking, like I was laughing. And I like opened one eye, and her bed was just on the other side of the wall, and she was awake. And I was like, okay, yeah, I realize I laugh now because I was such in denial that I didn't laugh while I sleep. And apparently I do. So
Wow, that is actually so interesting. That is crazy.
yeah. So who knows? But I was always a very active, like I slept walk as a kid, and I've always been
Okay,
told I've
okay.
talked in my sleep. So I think I'm a very active sleeper,
Very active, yes.
but my dreams, not so much.
Not so much. Wild. Wild.
So it is wild. I will also say that I think you have the prize of also being the youngest published author on the show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think I've interviewed anybody that's even close to 21. I mean, not
Really?
saying everybody's like that much older,
Well,
but you
right.
you definitely take
Yeah.
the prize on that today.
Well, I do what I can.
There we go.
I'll thank my parents for birthing me later than everyone else.
Yes, love it. Okay, so now that your book is out and published, what do you wish you would have known about yourself that you know now?
That is a really great question. I think from just the publishing side of just, I guess when I was writing it, I never really thought about sharing it. I know that seems
Okay.
silly,
Yeah.
but I was writing it for myself most of the time.
Sure.
And so I guess when I started publishing, it really never hit me that people were going to read my book.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I wish I would have tapped into a little bit more while just writing it, while working on the publishing and marketing. It's just accepting that this is a book and people
Yeah.
will read it. Because I'm
Well,
not
you
a
pour your
person.
heart and soul
Yeah.
into this, right? And
Yeah.
then it's like you're opening that part of yourself to a
Mm-hmm.
reader.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's something I believe very wholeheartedly, that every writer leaves a piece of their soul in their book,
Yeah.
no matter what kind of book it is.
Sure.
And, I think that's a process to accept and to recognize.
Yeah.
And as a first time writer, I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
didn't really comprehend it. And so that's something I'm going to continue taking with me as I write and as I hopefully publish more, is to
Yeah.
just recognize the pieces of my own soul that are in these books and to
Sure.
be okay sharing them.
Yeah, I imagine that there's fear there, right? Of like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
really exposing myself right
Yes,
now.
yes. This book, yeah, especially The Offenders, it was a book written in darker times in my personal life,
Sure.
it was one of those processing outlets.
Yeah.
And so when I reread the book this summer after it came out, I just remember I can go back and think about, and
Yeah.
I know exactly what I was thinking in certain areas.
Yeah.
I can see what I was reading. I can see what was going on just based on my writing. And that is just a unique experience.
That is unique.
Yeah.
Wow. What
Yeah.
a cool experience, though.
So that's something I would have gone back and wish I had known more than
Yeah.
I know now. Yeah.
Okay. And then what did you learn about yourself through this process?
I think I learned about myself personally, kind of going back to what we just talked about, that it's totally okay to share those vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
and that in most cases, other people share those similar vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
and that allowing them to be written on a page makes other people feel less alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that was what I
It's
learned.
interesting because I have that same debate in my own head sometimes when
Yeah.
I'm podcasting, right? Behind
Mm-hmm.
the mic is how vulnerable do you want to be? Right.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
is that fear a little bit. But at the same token, you flip it over, right? Of like, I always feel better if I'm going through some trial in my life, right? I always feel better when I hear someone else's story to know that, like, you are not the only one that has
Yes.
experienced this trial.
Yes.
And so it like does flip the coin for you a little bit of like, okay,
Yes,
it is okay because it might touch one person.
right. And like we talked about at the beginning, it's if you could touch one person with your story, whether
Yeah.
it be personal or your written fiction story, then you've done something great.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
well, I love all of this. I wasn't expecting our conversation to go here today, but I
You know
love
what? We're
it.
getting vulnerable and I love
We
it.
are.
I'm here for it.
We are. Well, let's switch gears a little bit though. I want to hear about who you are as a reader. What genres are you drawn
Oh
towards
boy.
when you read?
That's a really interesting question, Kara. So I will read pretty much any book you put in front of me.
Okay. Does
Anything.
it need a recommendation from a trusted source?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
For the best books, so this is what I do. I will usually find a very fun book that it's just a gut feeling. I just like pick a book from a shelf, pick a Kindle book, something like that, where I'm just like, I don't know, couldn't tell you. I'll just read
Sure.
it, see what happens. And then I'll pick what I call a palate cleanser book, where I
Okay.
know it's recommended. I know it's funny. I know it's sweet, something that a lot of people enjoy. And I'll read that as kind of like a separation. And then I'll go back
Okay.
to a really random, unique
Yeah.
book. That's kind of how I read.
I love that because I feel like you're exploring
Yes.
yourself, right? When you're picking up this book and I don't usually read the backs of books when they're coming into my life, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes like you're saying it's from a trusted source or I like the cover.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I don't even know what this book is about. So it's kind of fun when you go in blind like
Yeah.
that
And you're just
and
like,
what you're going
well,
to experience.
you're just like, okay, we're going to read what this person wrote. And they poured their heart and soul into this, whatever it is. And it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
have a go-to genre that you would choose?
So this summer, I was very much into hockey romances.
Fun. They are getting some clout there on
That's a
Bookstagram.
very niche genre. Yeah, yeah. And I gotta say, I was into it. Sports romance. I was like, okay, I'm here. Currently, I'm kind of working my way through some mafia romances, which
Okay.
is unique in itself. But I'm enjoying it. It's a fun ride, just seeing where it goes. I love rom-coms. I just, sweet, fun, cartoon
Yeah.
cover books where it's just you laugh and you have a good time. There's just all sorts of books there.
Like you were talking about earlier, like the
Yeah,
subgenres, right? Like these are the subgenres of
right.
like the big,
And
romantic fiction.
yeah, and I love some fantasy. Don't get me wrong, I love me some fantasy. But right now I'm kind of sticking to like
Yeah.
a big trend so far in this year has been just fiction, like real life fiction type of things. Yeah.
I guess you said you kind of hold your books
Mhm,
like you have a
mhm.
stack waiting for you when
I
you're done
do.
with school here
Yes.
for the semester.
Yes, I do. And I usually they're not books that I've been absolutely like waiting for. Usually they're just little books that I find on Kindle Unlimited or just something I
Yeah.
find at Barnes and Nobles, anything like that. They're not like
Yeah.
the book.
Like the ones you really want to dig into.
Yes, something that I can read but put down and focus on schoolwork.
Yeah.
Because I'm very much, if I start reading a book that I absolutely adore, I will
Yeah.
ignore
You get
everything
sucked in.
and read. Yeah. So I try to find books that I'm able to do
Yeah.
both studying and reading in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you have also been so gracious to prepare a book flight for us today. So can you tell us a little bit how you chose these books?
Yes. Okay. So I chose The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, and then Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. And face value, those are very different books. Very different books. One is historical fiction, one is high fantasy, just a lot of things going on there. The things that I chose about these books was the underlying theme of belonging.
Love that.
And so in my personal book, in The Offenders, a big theme was just acceptance and belonging. Astra was dealing with accepting her own self, her own mental health issues, but also trying to get accepted with her brother, with the family on Domhain. Like those were
Yeah.
big themes in The Offenders. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, Addie makes a deal and she basically lives for, she doesn't get remembered, basically. She just is immortal. No one remembers her. She lives her life
Yeah.
alone, basically, for like 300 years or something. And she finds then someone who remembers her. So The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is a book about finding acceptance and belonging with a
Yeah.
group, with people who understand you, who support you, who lift you up and encourage you. And those are important things to find in friends and
And I
family.
feel like a big part of that is just even being seen, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes, being seen in a
Yeah.
group setting. Yeah. And that was a big theme I pulled into The Offenders. On the other side, then, A Court of Silver Flames, when you strip away all the spicy
Yeah.
scenes, um, it's really a story about Nesta just accepting herself and who
Okay.
she is. She experienced a lot of trauma in the previous books, and it's like the fifth installment of a long series.
Which one it was, because I've only read the
I
first
was
one
not,
so far.
yeah,
I haven't made my way down the line. So
I'm not gonna like spoil it all, but she experiences the trauma in the previous book. And this is a story about just her personal redemption and how she ends up looking at the mirror at the end of the day and accepts and loves the person looking
yeah.
back. And I think that's such a
Yeah.
powerful thing. You know, I think that's something that a lot of people
Yep.
struggle with in their personal lives. And that's something I took to The Offenders when I was writing Astra. It's just how does she accept herself?
And I think that's part of the journey of where you're at. I remember feeling that in college, like, well, who am I? And do I accept myself? And
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out where
Yeah.
you fit in the world as a greater whole, right? Like you've kind of detached from your family unit a little bit because now you're
Yeah.
away at college or um but that's a huge part I feel like of those early 20s is accepting yourself and being vulnerable here on the mic. I think it took me way longer to like finally accept
Oh,
who I
yes.
was and like, okay, I don't really care what other people think of me. I'm okay. Like this is me and I'm
Yeah.
I'm happy with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It does take a lot. It's my I guess I would say my overall in the past few years just of college is just that theme of looking in the mirror and accepting the person
Yeah.
looking back and just making that person proud, making
Yeah.
yourself proud of your decisions, your language, who you're being around, just
Yeah.
those things, making yourself proud.
Because the only person at the end of the day that you get to deal with is your own mind, right? So you
Right,
better make yourself
right,
proud.
exactly. Yes. And that was something that I took from both of these books as a huge theme. And I really inputted them into my personal book as I was experiencing those things
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, and I think you get more
Yeah.
confident too as you get older. Is like you've met enough people and you've been through enough of like creating social circles that you know you're going to find your people. So I think that's how you can kind of let go a little bit
Yeah.
too of like, okay, if
Hmm.
that person doesn't like me, like that's fine. Like I will find my people, you know.
Yes. Yes. I think that's an important lesson to learn that it just unfortunately is one of those lessons that takes time and
Yes,
experience. You don't,
100%.
yeah, you don't,
And it still burns a little bit when someone doesn't want to be around you. You're like, oh, okay, that still sucks, but
you're like, oh, bummer, what's wrong? But it's like, nothing's wrong. We're just two different people, and that's completely okay. But, in high school and
hmm
middle school, when you're younger, that's
yeah,
everything. Everyone wants to be
yeah,
accepted, of course. That's a base human emotion. Um, yeah, but just as you come into your young adult years and experiences that kind of world, you realize that it's not quite important to have everyone like you. You want to like yourself and find other people that like you for
yes.
you.
Yeah, I remember my dad, he would always tell me, he's like, if you can count your good friends on one hand, consider yourself the luckiest person alive. And I'm
Yeah,
like, and he was telling me this when I was, I think, early college. So I still had like my high school friends. I still had
sure.
my college friends. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Hmm.
I have
Hmm.
hundreds of friends, right? And now that we move around with the military, right? You realize
Yeah.
who are going to maintain being your close friends. It doesn't mean something happened with these other people, but once you
Yes.
move away and you become a long distance friendship, that even changes the dynamic, right? Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes. That military lifestyle, it is quite
Yeah.
unique. Yeah, and I think I learned those lessons from reading stories like
Yeah.
these. Um, but also just because of that lifestyle, you're not in one place growing up with the same people until you
Yeah.
graduate. You're constantly changing, you're constantly moving. Things look different all the
Yeah.
time.
For you as a kid growing up with that, how many times have you moved in your young life?
Um, I think I've moved 8 or 9
Wow.
times. Yeah, right
Yeah.
around there. And sometimes it was back to the same place, sometimes it wasn't. But it was definitely a unique
Yeah,
experience.
and I was going to say for you, like I'm coming at this from an adult perspective, right? But for you, and like you said, like in those middle school and high school years when being accepted is everything and you're going in and out of
Mhm.
cities or schools or moving, that's really challenging.
Yeah, it definitely taught me the lesson of just how to make friends
Yeah.
fast and just it taught me the lesson of how to be bold in a
Hmm.
group. When you're constantly in a new environment, I see, and this is from my personal experience with my sibling and I, you can either choose to just jump into that new environment, make the new friends, just be in that neighborhood, or you can just sometimes it takes a little longer to adjust, and that's
Yeah.
totally fine. That's how some people are wired. Um, but it's such a quick pace that eventually, as you take long enough to adjust, then you're changing again and again and again. It's just there's kind of two different
Yep.
people when you grow up in the military, and one's going to just adapt like this, and one's going to take a little bit of
Yeah.
longer time, and that's okay.
Yeah. And like you
Yeah,
said, it's like you never know. You could be leaving 2 years down the road. So you're like, well, I'm going to make friends quick to like make this at least,
yeah,
to me, I
yeah,
always like if I have a community or have some friends, that helps me feel grounded in the place that we're living.
yeah. I think that's something else that drew me to specifically these two books as well is like we kind of talked about just like being in a group, being that found family. I love the
Yeah.
found family trope. I mean, it's just so pure of heart. And these people from all sorts of different lifestyles, experiences, ages, just religions, all sorts of things just coming together and just saying, hey, we are a cohesive
Yeah.
unit and we're going to stand together. And I think that's such a beautiful way to tell a story. And that's one of the big things I loved about writing my personal story and reading Silver Flames and Invisible Life of Addie LaRue for sure.
Yeah. Well, I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing these books with you today. They
Of
are
course. Yeah.
I've read the first one. I've read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue and I
Okay.
loved
Okay.
it as well. It's just and it really transports you through the story. Another great one
Yes.
for kind of imagining yourself in her shoes.
Yes. I love anything by V. Schwab
Yeah,
personally.
I haven't read the other
So
one that and it's skipping the title skipping my mind right now.
I know they have something there's a conjuring, there's like a magic
Okay.
book,
Maybe
there's a villains duology book, which is very
okay.
good, I have to say. That one's very good. Yeah, there's a couple like fantasy magic books which are
Okay.
excellent.
All right. Well, listeners, there's a
Yeah.
couple more for you.
Yeah, there you
One
go.
other question I had though is I feel like it's been a bit since we've talked about some fantasy books on here. So can you explain to us really quick about what high fantasy is?
High fantasy. Yeah. So, at least from my personal understanding, it's a little bit more than just like dragons and castles and
Okay.
swords. It's like fae, with some of them have powers, some of them don't necessarily have powers, but it's more of this intricate world.
Okay.
So, Sarah J. Maas's high fantasy series is a great
Okay.
example of that, where there's a human world, but then there's the fae world, and there's like a barrier. And all the fae have certain things about them. They're all like, super magic, super pretty. They have these ears, like kind of like like magic
Sure.
elves,
Okay.
basically, is how I think of them. And please don't come at me, people, because someone might have a different idea. That's just how I
Yeah.
think of them. Um, yeah, and it's more of like this realm entity. I also think when I think of high fantasy, I think of just more adult
Okay.
themes, just not quite, not like a little cute fantasy book for middle schoolers. It's more of an adult, more adult
Okay.
scenes, like relationship wise, just themes, emotions, adult
Okay.
feelings. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Because I know we talked about, I think way back, I think episode 4, if I
Okay.
remember correctly, was our fantasy episode. And my friend that
Okay.
came on, we talked about low fantasy versus high fantasy a little bit, but I'm like, it's been a long time since we've talked about that. So for
Yeah.
just in
Yeah.
case the listeners, listening are wondering.
There
So,
you go. That's what I would say it is. I'm sure there's some definition there. out there.
We won't
that
hold you
gives
to it. Don't worry.
synopsis, but that's my
Awesome.
thought.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. How I love to end our show is with our bonus pairings, which are just a speed round of questions here. So, where is your
Okay.
favorite place to read?
Favorite place to read? Honestly, probably on my couch, curled up with my little dog.
Love that.
Yeah. My dog likes to read with me, so that's a great time.
Our little fur babies are great companions for reading, especially when it gets cold.
Yes.
Keep my feet warm.
Right? I'm like, you can sit right there.
All right. What is one book you've read that has changed your life?
One book that's changed my life. Honestly, anything by Megan Quinn. She's a rom-com author, and I'm absolutely obsessed with her writing. She just has the funniest, most lighthearted books, but they also will just make you cry. And it's just she gives every single emotion in her books. And it's perfection every single time. And I will go to my grave loving Megan Quinn's books.
I haven't heard of her. This is a new to me author. So thank you for sharing that.
There you go.
Because I do love a book that makes me feel all the feels.
Yes, it's wonderful.
So my husband will look over sometimes and he's like, yes, I'm crying. I'm crying. Okay.
Just let it be. Just let it be. It's fine.
Yep. Okay. And then are you a rereader?
I have been. Very, very specific books. Like maybe out of every month, maybe like one every month.
All right.
But not a serial rereader.
Love it. Yeah. And then lastly, I'm dying to know, ever since you've messaged what this stack of books you have waiting for you is, what are you reading next?
What am I reading next? So I actually have a trip here after Thanksgiving. And I will be reading Book Lovers by Emily Henry.
Such a good one.
I've read all of her other books, but I've been saving Book Lovers all semester. So I'm ready. I'm ready to read
That's like the perfect book to just start off your Christmas break.
Yes, I'm so excited. It's been sitting on my desk almost the entire semester. And like every time I'm like, oh, this semester's so long. I'm like, you get to read that book.
Yes, a good treat at the end. Well, and then last question here is, so for the listeners, if they want to start following your journey as an author, where can we find you?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Ains_the_author.
So Ains, AINS, listeners. Okay. Underscore author, you said? Okay, and then underscore author. Okay, and I'll have that in the show notes as well. So you can always click that and you can click the link.
Perfect.
But yeah, if they want to follow along on your journey.
Yes, I'll be starting to post more frequently after the semester. It's a lot to read, write, and try to market stuff.
Understandably so. Please, please, you do finish college, finish out strong. That is important.
Right. Yeah.
But, well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having this show and just being such a lovely human.
You're welcome. Yes, it was. I know your time is precious, so I appreciate all that you've given me today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Ainsley Billings and her book flight on acceptance and belonging in books. We'd love to hear what other books you'd pair with this book flight at bookishflights.com. That is also where you can find more information on today's flight and any other books that we talked about today. I want to inspire a community of readers. So whenever you share a post about what you are reading or what you are picking up next, especially if you have heard about the book on the show, please tag us. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Bookish Flights. This is a brand new show, so if you enjoyed it, please head over to Apple Podcasts and give the show a review. Your review not only helps me, but it also helps the show reach others. Make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure that you will not miss an episode. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.